When the pandemic hit and everything got locked down, it seems like pretty much everyone, everywhere, started making claims that they would use this time for self-improvement and not let the time get wasted. Were you one of those people? Did you follow through? I was one of those people, and I definitely used the time to focus on my plans and feel like I was and am a different person now. In some ways, the lockdown was a cocoon, and when I came out of it, I was finally the filmmaker I had been struggling to become for the last decade. Hi, I'm Robert Christopher Smith, and this is the Lethal Voice Podcast. Tonight, we return to our regularly scheduled programming after posting the director's commentary for Vengeance Turns Volume 1 and Vengeance Turns Volume 2 over the past 2 weeks. I hope you caught those. We return to this first season of the Lethal Voice Podcast called Turning to Vengeance as we begin Chapter 3, Lockdown Productions, with tonight's episode, Cabin Fever Radio. After being homeless for several months and living in a rented car, the relief I felt was very real when I moved into the rented room in North Hollywood. And as you heard at the end of the previous episode, I was just beginning to see a little momentum in my personal life, but Vengeance Turns, as a project, it felt completely stalled out. In an effort to prove to myself I was not completely irrational about this project, I had come to the conclusion that maybe we just needed to shoot part of it as a short film, a sort of proof of concept that I could use to try again to build interest in the project. With that focus, I reached out to David Ruano and our makeup artist, Alondra Ramirez, along with Mariah Hart, so we could start doing some makeup tests and work out how the scalping scar and some other things should look. However, as you well know, the world got locked down before we ever had the chance to even shoot this short film. And with the world locked down seemingly indefinitely, I really began to just accept that we would probably never shoot Vengeance Turns at all. In my mind, though, I knew the lockdown couldn't last forever, and if somehow we were allowed back out into the world, and if the chance ever came up, I just wanted to be even more ready to shoot Vengeance Turns, but was also now starting to let other projects take over my focus. In the immediate wake of the world being locked down, people all over the world seemed to pretty quickly move in one of two directions. Like I said earlier, a lot of people decided that this would be their opportunity to somehow actually improve their life, making this dark time benefit them. And some of those people actually even followed through. I've talked to a lot of people who took major steps for real improvement in their life while we were forced to stay inside. But there was the whole other group, the rest of the world, who did not look at this as an opportunity for anything and just seemed stuck. I think having COVID right at the beginning of the pandemic and getting it so severely as I had definitely had me appreciating life and the world at large once I had successfully kicked the virus, which continued to kick my ass at least a little bit for months afterward. But when the official lockdown began, I'd only been back out of bed for a few weeks and was very committed to my daily walks and getting outside and just doing everything I could to get in better shape and recover as fully as I could. It probably wasn't even 24 hours after the lockdown began that I called David Ruano and told him that whether this thing lasted a week, a month, a year, or the rest of our lives, I didn't want it to be an excuse to get rusty on all the skills I had been so proud of building over the past few years in terms of filmmaking and acting. Since David had a lot more experience with the tech side of things, I suggested that we team up again and do weekly readings of different scripts that we picked out from TV and stuff. And I thought we could start with the episode of the Twilight Zone that's called Where Did Everybody Go?, which just seemed almost too on the nose. I told him we could reach out and just basically let all our actor friends know that we would be doing this on Friday nights as a regular thing. And if they wanted to join in, they could. They could just let us know by like Wednesday. And we would take folks until we filled out the cast and then invite everyone else to join in and watch the live stream, which David was able to steer out about everywhere from Facebook to Twitch and everywhere in between. It's probably no surprise at all that our actor friends flocked to the idea for much the same reasons, not wanting to lose their chops, but also to maintain some level of regular sociability at a time when none of us had any idea if we'd ever be in the same room together again. Reading that episode of The Twilight Zone was a blast, and everyone involved wanted to do another one the following week, and as a lifelong fan, I absolutely wasn't fighting that and was already rolling episodes through my mind trying to pick something else that might feel as relevant as Where Did Everybody Go? Before we even signed off from that first night, we had actors who had missed getting in on this first one, and they were now asking us if they could, if we could be sure to include them the next time. We had a full cast before that next Wednesday deadline, and we were set to read It's a Good Life on the following Friday. If you don't know, that's the episode with Billy Mumy, who played Will Robinson on the original Lost in Space. And it's about a 5-year-old child with the power of God and how it impacts the adults around him, and they find themselves cowering and bowing to him just to avoid his capricious and inhumane punishments. And although the orange, treasonous, sex-assaulting monster that is again occupying the White House right now was only on his first round of treason at that point and hadn't gone full authoritarian yet, it was something I saw as his plan from the beginning. And this episode really nailed my feelings about having our own monster in charge while the country was suffering one of its greatest problems ever in our history. Once David and I saw how eager everyone was to participate and that there seemed to actually be potential for an audience as well, especially considering the circumstances, we knew it was going to be a regular thing, and I wanted to give it a regular and official name. When David introduced that second episode, he let everyone know they were listening to what we were now calling Cabin Fever Radio.
I am your host for the evening, Mr. David Ruano. This is Gladiator, and you are listening to Cabin Fever Radio.
And Cabin Fever Radio would not just continue, but would actually grow over the following months. As the world sat at home, craving human contact and entertainment, we felt the exact same and used our weekly stream to deliver a little distraction, while all of us got to keep focusing on our lives and skills as actors and storytellers. The Twilight Zone thing was so popular, we probably could have spent the whole pandemic with Cabin Fever Radio doing nothing but readings of Twilight Zone episodes. Instead, we took advantage and started not just reading TV shows, but entire film screenplays, often breaking them in half and inviting the audience to come back the next week to hear the second half. Our reading of the screenplay Gladiator was completely off the rails, as I surprised even our fellow actors by showing up in a wild white wig and a green screen suit in front of a green screen wall that basically made me look like a floating head, while I read the narrations and the screen directions for Gladiator in an outrageous, made-up accent that had the audience cracking up and even our actors breaking and cracking up during the performance too. The link to that video is included in the description, but here, check this out. I hope you enjoy.
Overlooking the battlefield sits Caesar Marcus Aurelius atop his horse, surrounded by the Roman Praetorian guards. Back on the battlefield, Maximus approaches and addresses with his hand Valerius.
Sorry for the quality on that, but it's a little better if you listen to the actual YouTube video, so I hope you check that out. After several weeks of cabin fever radio and reading TV shows and film scripts with all our favorite actors, some of whom were from the original group I had corralled for Vengeance Turns, like Jamal Gardner, Kelsey Jaffer, someone in our audience asked if we would consider reading an original screenplay. David Ruano, who acted as the host for Cabin Fever Radio, pretty much came back and asked me directly, "Hey Bobby, what about Vengeance Turns?" Everyone in our cast and crew that night, and those watching, started cheering the idea on. And that really warmed my heart in an unexplainable way, something I needed at the time. And yes, of course, I thought it was a great idea. David and I talked after the stream that night, and I told him that if nothing else, at least we would finally have a real dramatic reading of this script we'd been working on for so long and have it recorded, since he was handling all that with our streams. We decided to really take our time with it though, and we broke it up into 4 parts this time and read it each Friday over the next month. Since I had already accepted in my heart that this movie was unlikely to ever be actually made for so many reasons now, this reading was extremely joyous for me already. But something happened afterward. Right after we read the final installment, something happened that would send me over the moon and just change everything forever. By the time we were reading Vengeance Turns, I had bought my own car and I'd moved actually to Gardena from North Hollywood to live in an apartment with David Ruano and his brother Andrew, who's a painter, and you can check out his work at Ari Studio or at Los Ruano Gallery, and I'll put those links in the description as well. A few hours after we streamed the final installment of our reading Vengeance Turns, David came to me and asked me if I still wanted to film the movie. I laughed and told him of course I did, but really didn't see how we had a chance of that happening, especially now with the whole lockdown and everything. He asked me if someone gave us about $50,000 and was able to also secure all the locations and provide all of the wardrobe, could I make that work? And would I want to? I mean, our original discussions for making Vengeance Turns had been numbers like $1 million and the possibility of A-list actors and stuff back when I was getting scammed by Slick Talker. And if you haven't heard it already, go check out episode 6, Slick Talking. Yeah, I'll put the link for that in the description as well. But that's the whole thing. Everything, all the other false starts had just been scams of some type. So I told him, yeah, if there is someone out there who really has $50,000 and can secure our locations and provide the wardrobe, I definitely wanted to make this movie with or without A-list stars. If there was even a chance, I was jumping on it. And once I got this thing started this time, nothing would stop us. And that is how I met actor and comedian Dave Ross. A friend of a friend of a friend who had recently produced his own feature film and seen it distributed places like Amazon Prime. And now, after hearing the whole script over the past 4 weeks and our tenacity for getting it out there, he said that he wanted to produce Vengeance Turns. Let me tell you right now that Vengeance Turns Volume 1 and Vengeance Turns Volume 2 would never have been made without that call from Dave Ross and his involvement. And while he created our momentum and was successful in securing the first location, he would not be a part of the production by the time we started shooting that second day, though. And his name would become a dirty word on the set and in my life from that point on. But you'll hear that whole meltdown next time. And you'll even hear from Dave Ross himself, who sat down with me for an interview not too long ago to discuss the whole debacle. All of that will be on next week's episode, 48-Hour Telethon. So make sure you're here for that. And don't forget, if you still haven't seen the movies yet, Vengeance Turns Volume 1 and Vengeance Turns Volume 2 are streaming free on Tubi and other places too, but you can watch them free on Tubi right now. And as always, the links are below in the description. Also, you should subscribe to the Lethal Voice newsletter immediately. You will receive a full-length comic book sequel to Vengeance Turns and some other digital comics just for signing up. And it's the place to hear about all of my upcoming projects first. We're going to be announcing the theatrical premiere for Spread, Pigs to Slaughter next week. Oh man, did I just spoil that? Oh well. Subscribe at lethalvoice.com. That's lethalvoice.com. Go subscribe today. That's all for me this week, Lethal Ones. Thank you from the bottom of my weird little heart for joining me here again on the Lethal Voice podcast. Until next week, keep your dreams in focus and your foot on the gas. I'm Robert Christopher Smith, and I'll miss you until we're all back here again next week, Lethal Ones.